Okay, we have our mount tightened down on the receiver. We have our mount centered, and what we're going to do next is we're going to form it. To form it, get a wooden block, get yourself a hammer, and the first thing we want to do is tighten up the band just a little bit. Not a lot, just a little bit. As you'll notice, we've got a pretty good size space, pretty good size gap of strap to take up. Now when you got this finely tightened, you want it to be about the width of the Allen wrench that I'm using, of a gap left when it's fully tightened. Need to have some gap. The other thing you want to watch very carefully when you're tightening it is that you don't bend this piece down. This clamping system has a tremendous amount of force, and you can bend one of these down pretty easy. And it does not need to be that super torqued that this thing is bent down touching the band. So let's get started on that. What we're going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and tighten it up a little bit. Put a couple turns on each one. Get it kind of even. And as I'm doing that, you might be able to tell that the band is pulling in a little bit on the bottom. And get a better view from up here. So I'm tightening it. You can see it pulling up there a little bit. And our band on our belly on the bottom is starting to suck in a little bit. You get a little bit of tension on it, and I'm basically just tightening it, just putting tension with 2 fingers. For the most part with just my thumb and my index finger. So I'm not really torquing on it. I don't want to torque on it real tight at this time. I want the band to start to form to the receiver. Once it gets a little snug for me to do that, we still got at least a good 3/8 of an inch gap there. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to form it a little bit with my block of wood. And so we're going to get around this side, see if we can show you that. So what I'm going to do, try not to hit my camera here, so I'm going to tap it in on the side a little bit. Now I've got that side formed. Now when you're forming it, past the 3 o'clock and the 9 o'clock on the other side of the receiver, you do not need to push it in up here. Don't bother pushing it in up in this area. Just to this point is where you're trying to form it, from right here on down, and that'll be underneath the wood line. You won't even see it. This up here, let it tighten naturally. Same with this side. You don't want to try to push it in right here. Let it push in as much as it does naturally. And you can see we got a fair amount less gap there on the bottom. And then what we're going to do is put a couple more turns on the screws. Got probably about another half turn on each screw. That's about all I'm getting. And it's getting snugged up. And we're going to tap a little bit more here on the side, down towards the bottom, and now I'm going to work my way around the bottom flat surface. Got to tap it a little bit harder here. It might sound like I'm really beating on it, but I'm not. But I want to try to get it uniform. Let me let you take a look at it. Now you can see that she's shaping up nice, and we don't have no more gap on the bottom. Now we got a little bit of a gap still around this side. You might be able to see the light there. Yeah, you can see the gap there. But on this side, we're pretty much form-fitted. Now, this area right here, that crease, you do not want to tap it and try to force it into that crease. That stresses out the band, and this edge is a little bit sharp. And if you push it in there, you can stress the band along that sharp edge. It'll be fine along that sharp edge as long as you don't do that. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take and tighten up our band. Yeah, we're getting a lot of turns of tension on it now. Got about 2 or 3 turns. Let's see if we can get to where you can see that a little better. Okay, now I'm starting to get tightened up a little bit better. Okay, at this point, oh, our gap here is probably around 1/4 inch. That's around 1/4 inch. So we went from a 1/2 inch down to about 1/4 of an inch. And you notice my angle is still at a 45 or a 90. So we haven't over torqued it. Now that we took up that slack, we're just going to run it around it again. We're going to do very little on this side, just a little bit, but we're going to concentrate more on the bottom. Then we're going to come back over here and put about 1/4 turn on each screw. Maybe a little bit more. And then we're going to focus on this side. And so what we're going to do here is take our hammer, without me smashing my camera here, and get it tapped in on the side. Notice I'm not going to tap it past the 9 o'clock mark on the receiver. Alright. Now, tighten her up a little bit more. Got about another 1/4 turn on there. Now on different receivers your gap is going to vary here. You can see right now we got about 2 widths of the Allen wrench that I'm using. Probably 3/16 of an inch. I don't think that's quite 1/4 anymore. And our band is formed real well. We're going to zoom in on that a little bit. You can see how it's formed up real well. And I'd say that's about done. Now what we're going to do is we're going to place it in a stock. I have a stock that's already been pre-inletted for a band. I'm not actually going to install this mount on my finish rifle, but I have another stock here. We're going to take a look at that. Let's take a look at that. Alright. Okay, here we have a stock that's already been inletted. Hopefully we can see that pretty good. Got pretty good light. And what we have is we have this area from here, from the metal mounting lug to the magazine well, and it comes just past that a little bit. But this area is roughly 1 inch, and your band is 1 inch wide. So this area has to be inletted. Typically it's got the flat sides here, and you can see that right here the flat sides are no longer there because I've went ahead and removed that with the Dremel. And I'm going to show you the tool that I use to do that. what I used to do that is I used a Dremel sanding wheel, and that's like about a 5/8 inch sanding wheel, and I have a Dremel attachment that I go ahead and do that with. And so I'll mount it on there. I'll mount that wheel on there, and then I stick it in this area here, and I round it out until I've got enough out. Now you can generally stop your inletting about a 1/4 inch from the top. If you'll notice, if you look down on the top of this stock, you don't see anything inletted up near the top. And that's because you got a natural gap there that's wider than the steel band is. And so you don't need to, and then that way it's pretty much invisible once the rifle's assembled as far as any inletting. You don't see anything. So let's go ahead and put the receiver in this rifle. Now when you're doing your inletting, it's a little bit at a time, till you get it to fit down in there. And there you go. It fits right down in there. Now, one thing you want to be cautious of is that the receiver fits down fully in the stock just as it did before you ever installed the band. And by that I mean you don't want any high spots. So what I always do is take a hand out here by the front, by the rear sight, and on the back of the receiver. Zoom out a little bit so you can perhaps see that a little bit better. And I'll try to rock it. And if I get any rocking in the action where it lifts up the front of the barrel when I press back here, or lifts up the rear of the action when I push back here, if I can get this kind of rocking action going, then I know that I don't have it inletted enough, and you're going to have to remove a little bit more material. At this point, you're ready to